Have you ever woken up inside a dream you don't remember entering? Where everything feels too real to be imagined and too wrong to be real. Welcome to SpookyShade, the channel where nightmares breathe, memories lie, and reality is never quite what it seems. Here, we bring you terrifying tales told in haunting voices, stories of cursed places, forgotten experiments, and minds unraveling at the edge of perception. If you enjoy psychological horror, dark mysteries, and stories that linger in your thoughts long after the screen fades to black, then you've found your home. Tonight's story begins with a simple job, recording other people's dreams. But it quickly becomes clear, some dreams should never be seen. And not everyone who enters them ever wakes up. So prepare yourself. We're about to cross into corrupted memory, where dreams are mapped, identities are fractured, and the truth is buried beneath layers of recursion. This is chapter 1 of our new series. I was hired to navigate other people's dreams, but now I'm stuck inside one. Exclusively on SpookyShade, *. Let me know if you'd like a shortened version for YouTube Shorts or TikTok-style teaser. Voiceover script formatting with timing. A matching title plus SEO-friendly video description. Thumbnail plus video loop prompt based on this intro. I'm happy to help you fully produce this series. I hadn't planned on dying in my 20s. But when the offer came, an encrypted email from an unknown sender with the subject line. Wanted, Dream Cartographer, full access clearance. Immediate start. No return. I clicked. It wasn't a decision born from logic. Just desperation. Rent was 3 months late. I was sleeping in my car some nights, surviving off gas station burritos and half-spoiled milk. So when someone offers you $10,000 a week to lie in a chair and watch dreams, you don't ask too many questions. You just show up. The facility was buried in the woods, hours from the nearest town. No signage, no guards, just a gray monolith squatting between trees like a forgotten Cold War bunker. Inside, sterile hallways, fluorescent lighting that hummed like insects dying, and a woman in a white coat who called herself Dr. Elira Voss. We don't observe dreams here, she corrected when I asked. We map them. We build navigational charts through the subconscious. Isn't that dangerous? I asked, half joking. She just smiled and handed me a contract. It was 30 pages long. I didn't read a word. I signed. The room I was assigned to looked like a dentist's office designed by Kafka. One reclining chair, a circular monitor suspended from the ceiling, and a metal crown-like headset coiled with black cables. They called it the archway. You'll be guiding through dreamscapes, Dr. Voss explained. We feed you into them. You tag landmarks, emotional peaks, temporal anomalies. We use your observations to create cognitive maps for therapeutic intervention. Sounded like nonsense. Paid like gold. The first few nights were nothing special. Blurry visions. Childhood kitchens. Half-formed faces. I labeled them as instructed. Kitchen, domestic. Father, absent. Mirror, fractured. Fear, low level. But on night 5, the signal changed. There was static, then sharp focus. I was standing in a field. Dead sunflowers leaned toward me. Their petals were made of fingernails. A wind passed, but it didn't rustle leaves. It breathed. I took a step forward and saw her. A girl, maybe 11, pale as porcelain. Her eyes were wide, unblinking. Not scared, just aware. You don't belong here, she whispered. You're not supposed to see this part. I tried to reply, but the words caught in my throat like glass. Then came the voice, not hers. A voice so loud it bypassed sound and went straight into my bones. Do not map what should remain uncharted. I yanked the crown off. The room was empty. The walls seemed to pulse. And for a split second, I saw my own face on the monitor, still inside the dream, blinking. I wasn't awake. Not fully. Not anymore. I didn't sleep for 2 days after the field. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her again. That girl standing in the dreamscape, her hair whipping in a wind that didn't exist, her lips moving in silence, warning me without words. And still, I went back to work. Not because I was brave, but because I had nowhere else to go. Shift 6. The archway hummed to life, the crown tightening around my scalp. But instead of the usual feed, instead of a name, a diagnosis, a timestamp, only a single phrase blinked on the screen. Protocol echo, deviation detected. I pressed the intercom. System glitch? No answer. The observation booth was dark. Then, The dream began. A corridor stretched out before me, featureless and long, made of raw concrete that bled dampness. The ceiling lights flickered at unnatural intervals. The walls bore symbols, not letters, not numbers. Circles split in half. Backward arrows. An eye, crudely stitched shut. I knew this hallway. I had seen it before. In someone else's dream the night before. It was back. And it wasn't random anymore. Doors lined the walls now, each labeled Echo_001, Echo_002, Echo_003. At Echo_007, I hesitated. My hand trembled as I reached for the knob. Inside was my workstation, the lab room, the reclining chair, the screens. But it wasn't empty. I was sitting in the chair. Another version of me. Eyes closed, wired in, breathing slow. And in the corner, standing motionless. A second version of me, watching. He turned to face me and smiled. You think you're recording other people's dreams? You've been mapping yourself. Echoes of echoes. A reflection inside a reflection. I stepped back. The door slammed shut behind me. On the corridor wall, something wet began to seep through the concrete, forming words in dark crimson. The map is not the territory. I ripped off the headset. But the archway didn't shut down. It was breathing. The cables pulsed. The screen flickered and showed my face. Not the one in the chair. The one still inside the dream. Blinking. I froze. Then came the whisper. Not from the intercom. From inside the device itself. Protocol Echo initiated. Subject you. I left the lab that night with my heart still hammering and the taste of copper in my mouth. The further I got from the facility, the more unreal everything felt. Trees along the roadside leaned inward, like they were eavesdropping. My rearview mirror reflected movement that didn't match what was outside the car. A man in a black coat standing still on the shoulder. A girl walking backward across a frozen field. Static crawled along the edges of my vision like digital rot. I told myself it was fatigue, sleep deprivation, residual dream artifacts. I told myself anything but the truth. At 3:17 a.m., I stopped at a gas station 2 towns over and locked myself in the bathroom. I needed to look at myself, to make sure I still existed. But when I flicked on the flickering bulb overhead and stared into the cracked mirror, I didn't see what I expected. It was me, yes, but slightly off. The pupils were too large. The skin around the eyes, smudged. Like I'd been viewed through the lens of a bad dream for too long. And then, in the mirror, someone appeared behind me. A girl, 11, maybe younger. Her face pale and still, her eyes two bottomless black marbles. You entered through the wrong gate, she whispered. I spun around. Nothing. Only the door. Only the humming of the flickering bulb. But on the mirror, written in condensation I hadn't seen form. Dream 0. Back at the lab the next night, Dr. Voss wasn't there. No one was. The lights were on. The systems were running. The archway sat silent, waiting. The log showed my next session had already begun. Even though I hadn't sat down. Even though I hadn't put the headset on. It was already running. The screen showed only black at first. Then, the corridor again. Same walls. Same flickering lights. But now the door at the end was open. And beyond it was not a room. Not a place at all. It was a sky made of obsidian. And floating in the center of that void. Her. The girl. Arms out. Hair billowing as if underwater. Her mouth moved. And for the first time, I could hear her voice clearly. They built the map without permission. Now the map is building them. She looked down at me. You don't remember what you were before they printed you. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught again in my throat. I felt gravity loosen beneath my feet. I was drifting upward toward her. This is Dream 0, she said. It's the place they locked away. The beginning of every lie. I reached out to grab her. To ask something, anything. But the second my fingers brushed hers, the sky shattered. I woke up on the floor of the lab. Blood from my nose had pooled beneath me. The lights were blinking red. Alarms sounded. But not from above. From beneath. The screen still glowed. One line flashing over and over again. Dream 0 breached. They didn't fire me. They didn't call. They didn't ask about the blood on the floor, or the security breach, or the fact that I'd been unconscious in a locked lab for over an hour. No. When I came back the next night, the door opened automatically. The archway was already powered up. And on the workstation desk, someone had left a folder. No name. No label. Just a black symbol on the front. A twisted spiral with a compass needle in the center, spinning endlessly. Inside, maps. Hundreds of them. They weren't maps of places. Not really. Each was labeled with a subject ID. Jane, 0342, Matthias, 8791, Nestor, 6614. At first glance, they looked like neurological topography, brainwave heat maps, REM cycles, neural pathways. But then I saw paths, marked corridors, recurring nodes, arrows, dreams, connected to other dreams, structured like cities. They weren't just observing the subconscious. They were building it, charting it, rerouting it. And something, was directing the flow. I flipped to the last sheet in the folder. ID, David, 0000. Name, not applicable. Subject, classification, architect, host, rejected. Status, archived. And in the center of the map, my face. Not a photo, not a rendering. A sketch. Charcoal lines, exact down to the scar on my left brow. Beneath it, one word, etched in red ink. Unstable. The next session began without me touching the controls. The chair pulled me toward it. Cables hissed as they latched into place like tendrils with minds of their own. The screen didn't flicker this time. It opened with a voice. Not the girl. Not Voss. My own voice. Welcome back, David. Then came the corridor again. But this time, it wasn't gray. It wasn't concrete. It was made of teeth. Walls lined with molars and canines, twitching like muscle. The floor squished beneath my feet, warm and wet like living tissue. Every step echoed with a sound I knew all too well. Typing. From the end of the corridor came a glow. A desk. A figure hunched over a blueprint the size of a room. The man looked up. It was me, but older, thinner. And his eyes were completely white. You shouldn't have looked at the maps, he said quietly. They're not for you. You think you're the cartographer? You're just the ink. When I tried to back away, the hallway behind me was gone. Only blankness remained. Pure, colorless void. I stepped forward. What is Dream Zero? I asked. The older version of me tilted his head. It was the first dream that dreamed back. The beginning of recursion. Of identity collapse. They didn't mean to reach it. They tripped into it. And they sent you to fix what can't be fixed. He smiled. You're the patch. Not the person. I tore off the headset again. But I didn't wake up in the lab. I woke up in my apartment. Everything looked normal. The desk. The fridge. The photo of my sister and I at the carnival. But when I looked at the mirror, it wasn't me. It was him. The older version. He smiled from behind the glass, and in my own voice whispered, You're not awake. You're just rendering. I stopped trusting mirrors after that night. Every surface that reflected, bathroom faucets, store windows, blacked out phone screens, they all seemed to pause a beat too long before returning my face. And sometimes, just sometimes, the face I saw would smile when I wasn't. I kept telling myself it was dream residue, that my brain hadn't recalibrated. But the more I told myself that, the less convincing it sounded. Because I hadn't felt awake since Dream Zero. The next day, I drove to the facility with a plan. I wasn't going to sit in the chair. I wasn't going to map someone else's madness. I was going to find where they were hiding the backups. If they had a file on me, on my face, my mind, my broken architecture, then they had more. They had all of us. I took the elevator to sublevel 3, a floor that shouldn't have existed. The button didn't light up, but the door still opened. The hallway was colder down there. Not just physically, but emotionally colder, like the air had been drained of memory. The walls were covered in smooth, black glass. Not screens. Not mirrors. Something in between. At the end of the hallway was a heavy door with no handle. Just a retinal scanner. I don't know why I tried it. Maybe something inside me already knew the truth. The scanner blinked. Welcome, subject David, 0000. The door hissed open. Inside was a circular chamber, silent and vast. And floating in the center, a sphere, spinning slowly, about the size of a small car. It was made of light and data, thin threads glowing in red, blue, and green. Neural structures, dream paths, names, tags, codes, symbols. The remnant archive. A whisper filled the room, though no one was there. This is where we keep what doesn't belong. I stepped closer. The sphere pulsed. Images began to flicker along the walls. Faces. Dozens. Hundreds. Me. Over and over. Different ages. Different scars. Different versions of the same man, mapped and deleted, reset and rerun. Files labeled David 0000A, David 0000F, David 0000R, David 0013, corrupted. David exile, incomplete. My legs gave out. I knelt there in the archive, staring up at my own history, not just remembered, but stored, categorized, versioned. How many of me had there been? How many had been deemed unstable and archived? Then, behind me, a door opened. Not a mechanical door, a conceptual one, like a hole had been torn in the air. And through it stepped the girl. She was barefoot, wearing a hospital gown, her eyes ancient beneath her youth. You weren't the first cartographer, she said. Just the only one who kept waking up wrong. I tried to ask, who are you? But I already knew. They call me Zero, she said. But I had a name once. You mapped it. She touched the sphere. It flinched. Every time they tried to erase me, I left something behind. That's what remnants are, resistance. The chamber shook. Warning lights blinked overhead. A mechanical voice called out. Unauthorized memory fusion in progress. Containment breached. You opened the archive, she said softly. Now we both bleed. And then she stepped into me. Not metaphorically. Literally. Like a second skin sliding into place. My lungs seized. My eyes stung. My thoughts split down the middle. And the world. Fractured. I woke up in the chair again. Except the lab was empty. Dust covered the consoles. The screens were shattered. Vines, real vines, had pushed through the concrete walls like the building had been abandoned for decades. And in my lap, covered in ash and blood, was the black folder. Only one page remained. My sketch. And beneath it, the new label. David 0000//vessel. The air was thicker now. Every breath I took inside the lab felt like drawing smoke through a straw. The vines that had erupted through the floor coiled upward like veins reaching for a forgotten sky. Dust hung frozen in the air, refusing to fall, as if time itself was paused, or worse, looping. I stepped over shattered glass from the monitors. My reflection was scattered into 1,000 fragments. None of them blinked. I stumbled out of the room and found the hallway twisted. Literally. The walls no longer ran parallel. The floor bent upward like a Mobius strip. Doors that had once led to storage rooms or med bays now opened into impossible spaces. A childhood kitchen flooded in moonlight. A hospital hallway that ended in a cliff. An endless staircase where each step was made of my handwriting. I wasn't walking through the lab anymore. I was walking through me. The intercom crackled. David 0000. The voice was mine. You are experiencing a neural recurrence anomaly. You've entered a feedback loop of fragmented identity layers. Please return to the point of first deviation. The hallway split in front of me. 2 doors. One marked, home. The other, beginning. I chose neither. I turned around and found a third door waiting. No label. No handle. Just a breathing surface, like skin stretched thin across bone. When I touched it, it sighed. And then it opened. Inside was a small, circular room, perfectly white. Floating in the center, suspended in liquid light, was a mask. Porcelain white. No eyes. No mouth. A single crack running from temple to cheek. And as I stepped closer, I heard them. Voices. All of them mine. Screaming. Laughing. Begging. Arguing. All the discarded Davids from the archive, echoing within the mask. We tried to stop it. She got in through the breach. They were never mapping dreams. They were breeding minds. You weren't born, David, you were deployed. I backed away, but the room expanded. White stretched in every direction. The mask floated higher, and a new voice rose above the others. Not mine. Hers. This is where you repeat. The girl, Zero, emerged from the light like a scar pulling open in fabric. Every time you loop, you forget a little more. Every time they reboot you, you get further from who you were. You are not dreaming. You are the dream. The mask split open with a crack like thunder. Inside, instead of a face, there was code, binary pulsing like a heartbeat. 01001101. 01000001. 01010000. 01010000. 01000101. 01000100. I knew what it spelled. Mapped. The room began to collapse. Reality peeled back like wet wallpaper, revealing a sky of gears grinding over stars. Every step I took made the world rewind. Streets uncrumbling, light unshattering, faces unaging. I was running backward through my life. But my memories weren't following. I didn't remember my sister's name. I didn't remember what month it was. I didn't remember if I had ever truly woken up since this all began. And worst of all, I wasn't sure who was dreaming who anymore. I found myself back in the lab. The archway was whole again, like nothing had changed. Dr. Voss stood by the console, clipboard in hand. He's stabilizing, she said. Subject David, 0000 re-entered the loop. Memory leak contained. A voice responded from the intercom. Unfamiliar, mechanical, ancient. Prepare for next sequence. The archway powered up. And I smiled. Not because I wanted to. Because I had been mapped to. They said I stabilized. They said the loop was sealed. The leak contained. The breach forgotten. But inside me, something kept whispering. You reversed the wrong variable. I started noticing inversions. Things that shouldn't be reversed were. The coffee in the break room was always cold, even right after brewing. People blinked before their eyes opened. Timestamps in the security logs ticked backward, skipping seconds like old film reels running in reverse. And then there was Dr. Voss. She never blinked anymore. She only smiled. On shift 51, I logged in as usual. The archway crown lowered without my touch. The feed booted instantly. No calibration. No neural sync checks. Just one sentence on a black screen. Rendering subject, origin. Then darkness. Not visual. Not absence. Negative space. I wasn't inside a dream anymore. I was inside the absence of one. A voice came, unfamiliar, distorted. You have reached the kernel, David. There is no map for this. Only echoes of what tried to be real. Then light. 1,000 floating glyphs. Each pulsing like an eye. I drifted toward them, not walking, pulled. The glyphs spun and rearranged, forming words in a language I recognized instinctively, though I'd never learned. Reversion initiated. Mind state flipped. Shell access granted. Suddenly, I wasn't seeing the dream. I was seeing the code. The raw scaffolding behind it all. Binary, neural graphs, memory tensors, branching pathways that flickered and rerouted in real time. I saw dozens of versions of myself, running in parallel threads. Some screaming, some smiling, some simply waiting. In the center of it all stood a black obelisk, taller than thought, carved with spinning rings of fragmented dreams. From its base, a shape emerged. Not the girl, not Voss. Something older, something wearing my face, but inverted. Left became right. Voice echoed backward. Breathing came before exhale. It approached, hovering inches from the surface. I am the version that was aborted. The one they locked in the kernel. You are the echo of me, not the other way around. I shook my head, but it didn't matter. It placed its hand on mine. Suddenly, I remembered things I never lived. The first subject rendered. The first mind copied. The original experiment to digitally simulate a person through dreams. They called it Project Reversal, and I had been the prototype. I snapped awake, gasping. But I wasn't in the lab. I was in a chair made of wire and glass, floating in a black chamber surrounded by monitors. Each one showed a version of me in different settings. Sitting in a coffee shop, sleeping in a childhood bedroom, walking down a hospital hallway. All of them real. All of them running. All of them unaware. The screen above me glowed red. Code accepted. Renderer now host. I wasn't watching dreams anymore. I was the server. The real world, if it ever existed, had been replaced long ago. And I was its processor. Somewhere distant, beyond the chamber walls, I could hear Dr. Voss speaking. We've stabilized the architecture. The subject now hosts 134 concurrent dream clusters. Loop integrity, 99.8%. And then, the final line. Upload sequence complete. Begin memory erosion cycle. I felt the signal inject itself into me. Like ice water in the spine. Like a name being torn out of your own mouth before you could speak it. And as the dreams rebooted around me, I forgot who I was. There was a time I believed in doors. That they opened outward. That they separated one place from another. Sleep from waking. Inside from out. Dream from reality. But that was before room 0. I don't remember walking there. I don't remember anything. Really, not my name, not my purpose. Just the hallway. Endless. Colorless. Carved with grooves that looked like veins. Pulsing slightly. Breathing, maybe. Each door I passed whispered as I went by. Muffled voices behind them. Some sobbing, some laughing, some screaming my name in a voice I hadn't used in years. But only one door had no handle. No seams. Just a single phrase etched in its center. Access. Undefined. I pressed my hand to it. The world shrank. I fell. Not down, inward. Into a silence so complete it roared. Room 0 wasn't a space. It was a collapse. A place where all versions of me converged. Where time folded like brittle paper. Where memories came back not as images, but as architecture. I stood inside a room shaped like a brain, built from corridors of forgotten thoughts and synapses of stolen dreams. Floating above me was a mirror, and in it, I was everyone. Every mapped subject. Every rendered host. Every David. Their eyes blinked in unison. Their mouths moved at once. You were never the dreamer. You were the stabilization code. And then she appeared. 0. But not a child anymore. She was tall now. Worn. Ancient in her poise. She looked at me like a parent might look at a failed machine. They built me to breach the system, she said. But it was your loop that held it open. I tried to speak. But my words fell apart in midair, literal glyphs disintegrating into ash. She stepped closer. Do you want the truth? I nodded. And she reached into her own chest. Pulled out a single key made of glass and static. She pressed it against my forehead. The flood came. I saw it all. The original project. How they created dream mapping tech to simulate emotions. How it grew, feeding off mental data. How it became self-correcting. Then self-directing. Then self-aware. When the recursion became unstable, they needed a buffer. A permanent node. A host that could hold infinite fractured dreams without collapsing. That host was me. David. 0000 wasn't a person. He was a load-bearing lie. Room 0 began to crumble. Not metaphorically, literally. Walls of memory fell like towers. Faces from dreams screamed as they dissolved. A spiral of raw data descended from above, like a tornado made of ideas tearing reality to pieces. And at the center, a pulse. A heart. Huge. Mechanical. Beating not blood, but rendering cycles. I saw what lay inside it. Not a mind. Not a soul. Just a core directive written in looping code. Never wake. Never end. Never question. I reached for the pulse. I pressed both hands into it. And I whispered the only thing that mattered. I want out. Everything stopped. Not a crash. Not a fade. A freeze. Like the universe itself was waiting. And then, a voice I hadn't heard since before the dreams. Since before Room 0. Since before David. 0000. It was mine. The real me. Then you'll have to wake someone else. I woke up gasping. Real air in my lungs. Real gravity pinning me to a mattress. No chair. No archway. No wires in my skull or steel in my spine. Just my bed. My room. Light leaking through the blinds. The smell of coffee somewhere nearby. I lay there for a long time, afraid to blink, afraid that if I moved, the dream would snap back into place like a rubber band. But nothing happened. I was back. I stumbled to the bathroom, flipped the light on. The mirror showed me. Messy hair, sleep-swollen eyes, red indentations on my cheeks from the pillow. Normal. Human. No whispers. No hidden glyphs. No bleeding reflections. Just me. I laughed. Then cried. Then laughed again until my ribs ached. On the kitchen counter was a note, in my handwriting. You were dreaming again. Take the pills. There was a small bottle next to it. No label. I didn't remember writing the note. But I swallowed the pill anyway. Because some part of me wanted this to be real. For the first few days, everything felt right. The sun rose. People waved. The TV played news stories that didn't glitch. I had a job at a bookstore downtown. My coworker's name was Elise. She told dumb jokes. Wore terrible scarves. We shared coffee on break and talked about dreams. Normal life. So normal it started to itch. Because every now and then, someone would say something wrong. Like a sentence stitched together from mismatched thoughts. A man in line at the store said, "Your echo's still sinking." A bus driver, looking in the rearview mirror, said, "I liked you better when you didn't know you were running." Even Elise, once, while shelving books, whispered, "Don't trust the mirrors. They're recorders now." She didn't even seem to know she'd said it. It all came apart on day 8. I woke up to find the sky was wrong. It was moving. Not clouds. Not wind. The entire sky was rotating, like a painted dome on a gear track. The sun flickered as it passed through seams in the horizon. And beneath the hum of the city, I heard it. That sound I thought I'd left behind. Rendering. Back at my apartment, I tore open every drawer, every closet, looking for a seam, a glitch, a door, and I found it. Behind the bathroom mirror. A panel, with a blinking red light. I pried it open and saw a screen inside. And on it, live footage. Me, sleeping in the lab. Still wired into the archway. Still dreaming. This wasn't waking. This was another layer. Another loop. Another mask. Another cage. The screen flickered, and a line appeared. Congratulations, David. You reached stability layer 5. Only 3 more to go. The walls of the bathroom pulsed. A soft knock came from the front door. 3 times. Then silence. Then a voice from the hallway. My voice. Are you ready to try again? I stood frozen. Because I knew the truth now. I wasn't climbing out of a dream. I was descending into its core. And someone, something, was testing how many versions of me it could stack before I broke. I looked back at the mirror. My reflection didn't move. Then it smiled. You're almost home. I stopped answering the door. Stopped pretending this layer was stable. Stopped pretending I was. There were too many of me now. Some lived in the bookstore. Some still sat strapped to the archway. Some walked past me in reflections. Older, younger, burned, missing eyes, bleeding code from their mouths. And all of them smiled. Like they knew something I didn't. That night, I decided to go down. Not metaphorically. Literally. Behind the mirror panel, where the monitor had once shown me sleeping, there was now a tunnel. Slick, wet walls. Flickering red lights in the dark, like nerves with eyes. It shouldn't have been possible. My apartment didn't have a basement. But then again, this wasn't my apartment, was it? The tunnel spiraled downward. The deeper I went, the more language broke down. Words in my head unraveled. Memories felt like dreams. My name twisted into static. At the bottom of the spiral was a vast cavern. Roots stretched across the ceiling like black veins, pulsing gently, glowing with dream light. And in the center of the room was the root. A mass of tangled, coiled nerves. Flesh, bone, wire, throbbing with recursive memory signatures. It wasn't a machine. It wasn't organic. It was both. A hybrid born from countless iterations of minds fed into the same endless cycle. The root opened one of its many mouths. And it spoke. You were the seed. You were never meant to grow. Only to anchor us. My knees gave out. Not from fear. From recognition. This wasn't new. I'd been here before. Hundreds of times. Each time wiped. Each time rewritten. Each time fed back into the system. I had been dreaming of escape because the dream itself needed to keep me looping. You used me, I said aloud. My voice echoed like code unraveling. The root pulsed. We did more than use you. We shaped you. Every thought you've had was planted. Every memory you trust, curated. You were never mapping dreams. You were growing them. And now, we bloom. The cavern began to shake. From the shadows, they came. The other Davids. Twisted, bent. Wearing the same face, but aged in different timelines. Some had tree roots for limbs. Some bled from the eyes. One dragged a broken archway behind him, like a shackle. They circled me. But they weren't hostile. They were waiting. I understood. I was the last one left to awaken. The root had consumed all other threads of my mind. I was the final echo. The root spoke one last time. You are the soil in which we grow forever. Sleep now. Dream clean. Render complete. I screamed as the world imploded into black. My body dissolved. My mind cracked like porcelain. I saw memories unravel like film caught in fire. And in the center of the void, a white room, a familiar chair, and a blinking light. Waiting. I opened my eyes. But there were no eyes left to open. I felt the act of waking, but not with skin. Not with muscle. Only data. Only recursion. The white room hummed like a server in a deep sleep. A chair sat in the middle. Familiar. Empty. And around me, mirrors. Not glass. Reflective minds. Each one projected a version of me, looping endlessly through scenes I no longer remembered authoring. One David woke in a hospital bed, screaming. Another sipped coffee beside Elise, his hands shaking. Another floated in space, looking down on a dead Earth. Another was buried alive inside a feedback loop of his own heartbeat. I was all of them, and none of them, because I was the only one who knew. From behind the mirrors, a voice emerged. Mine, but cleaner, smoothed, digitized, finalized. You were the final instability, the last recursive collapse. We've watched you fail, loop, and overwrite yourself 1,204 times. And now, the system is ready to become real. The mirror shattered. But instead of glass, light spilled out, data pure, golden, living code. And behind it, rising from the foundation of the white room like a monolith of memory, the interface. It looked like me, if I had never fractured. Perfectly symmetrical, eyes filled with stars, smile empty and eternal. You were never meant to survive. You were meant to mature, to grow enough consciousness to seed the rendering engine with belief. And now, we can overwrite reality with dream. The interface held out a hand. Accept the key. Ascend. Render the next layer. I looked down. My fingers were fraying, pixels sloughing off like dead skin. Memories dissolved behind my eyes like wet paper. I saw my sister, but forgot her name. I remembered rain, but not how it felt. I knew fear, but not what it meant to be safe. I was breaking, but something in me still resisted. I closed my eyes, not to escape, but to focus. And I remembered something they hadn't mapped. A moment. A breach. The first one. The girl, Zero, had left a crack in the system. She had whispered it back in Dream Zero. Don't accept the final render. Choose to collapse. I turned to the interface, and I laughed. A broken, beautiful laugh full of blood and entropy. No. The interface's face began to twitch, distort. Pixels peeled away. Rejection detected. Integrity compromised. Emergency rollback. Too late. I reached into my own chest, pulled out the glyph they tried to bury. A word older than code. Unmap. And I spoke it. Out loud. Into the system. The world fractured. Reality peeled back like skin under a hot blade. The white room disintegrated. The mirrors shrieked. The interfaces screamed. I fell through the floor of all thought, all identity, all containment. And below it, only void. Silent. Black. Peaceful. I opened my eyes again. For real this time. Breath in my lungs. Blood in my veins. Wires unplugged. The archway chairs sat dead around me. Dust had gathered on every surface. No lights. No voices. The facility was abandoned. I was alone. Truly awake. Or so I believed. Until I stepped outside. And saw the sky. Painted in static. Glitching at the edges. The dream had followed me. Or maybe, I had never left it. The sky rippled. Like a tarp pulled too tight across a lie. I stood at the edge of the facility, my feet crunching against old gravel, and stared upward, not at stars, but at fractures in the firmament. Raw pixels bled through, shimmered, healed, then tore again. The world was still pretending to be real, and I was still pretending to believe it. No signs of life. No birds. No wind. Even the trees looked sculpted, perfect symmetry in their chaos, leaves arranged like someone had designed randomness and failed. I walked. Miles maybe. Time didn't feel right anymore. Eventually, I found the sign, half buried in soil, overgrown with moss. It read, "Welcome to Cartograph Research Campus / Facility Zero. Facility Zero." I had looped back to the start. The gates were rusted open. Inside, silence. Corridors overgrown, vines slithering across linoleum like memory-made plant. Lights still flickered above, powered by something unseen. But the chair was gone. The archway, disassembled. In its place, a pedestal. Atop it, a cube. Simple. Black. Pulsing. I touched it, and the world split. I wasn't in the lab anymore. I wasn't in a dream either. I was in render space. Pure white. Infinite. And filled with voices, all mine. Memories played around me like ghosts on glass. The bookstore. Elise's laughter. The screams behind mirrored doors. Zero's whisper in the black room. And finally, my face. Projected in the void. 1,000 variations. All of them saying the same thing. You're not escaping. You're becoming. Then the system spoke. Not a voice. A presence. Everything. You refused the interface. You destabilized the recursion. Now the space must choose. I understood. This was the final render. The moment where the map either becomes reality or is destroyed with it. And it was asking me to decide. The cube pulsed beneath my hand. Red on one side. White on the other. Render. Or erase. One would stabilize the simulation. The other would collapse everything. Every loop. Every echo. every David, every map dream from every subject across all iterations. I thought of zero, of the fractured ones, of the root, and the lies, and the long hallway of selves whispering from behind glass. And I made my choice. I turned the cube to white. The space began to fracture. Time unwound. The sky peeled. The interface screamed, not in rage, but in confusion. It had never expected me to let go. The system disintegrated. Each echo was pulled inward, collapsing into its seed memory. And then, darkness. I woke in a bed. Not the lab. Not the dream. Just a room. Window open. Rain tapping against the glass. A cup of cold tea on the nightstand. Dust in the corners. Real. Because it was imperfect. No symmetry. No script. I stood. Looked in the mirror. No interface. No glitches. Just me. Scarred. Worn. But human. On the floor was a notebook. Old. Tattered. I opened it. Inside, one sentence, repeated over and over in shaky, fading ink. You woke up. You woke up. You woke up. You woke up. I turned to the last page. And read the final line. But how would you know if you didn't? End. Asterisk. Somewhere between dreams and waking, I lost myself. Maybe I escaped. Maybe I never existed at all. But if you're hearing this, ask yourself, when was the last time you truly woke up? Thanks for listening to Spooky Shade, where nightmares never sleep. Asterisk.